them during the Q&A session at the end of the meeting. Also, just to let you know, we are recording this session and we'll share this back out as part of our follow-up communication with our grantees. So I'm going to turn it back over to Amber.
All right. So because we have a broad spectrum of organizations on the phone call, both from rural and urban-based communities, as well as in terms of size, there's a lot of information that we want to share. So some of this will pertain to you and then some of it might not. Please bear with us as we just try to be robust and give a comprehensive overview of resources for all of the sector. Just to give you a sense of our agency update, effective Monday, March 16th, because of the pandemic, our entire staff moved into full-time telework status, and our physical office was closed. We will remain in this status until determined by agency leadership in consultation with state and health officials that it will be safe for us to move back into our physical space. Because our physical office is closed, we are, however, responding to all emails, and the phone numbers on our website and the resources there are still working and are still pertinent. If you do send something to us via snail mail or FedEx/priority mail, it may be delayed in getting to us. This includes our ability to send out hard copy grant checks. I'm actually going and picking up our mail twice a week. And so because we're not checking this just as a safety precaution on a daily basis, there may be a delay in getting payments mailed snail mail to you if that applies. I'd like to shift to a federal update, as I'm sure many of you have seen in the news information about the stimulus funds and the CARES Act. Just to give you a sense of the funding that was made available to the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, both cultural federal agencies were appropriated each $75 million. Out of that, there was a provision in the bill that stated that 40% of those funds must be distributed to regional and state arts agencies, either the State Arts Agency or the State Humanities Council. I'm sure that you have probably seen that the Oklahoma Humanities Council has already sent out information related to their stimulus funds. We are currently working. They are a nonprofit agency, a nonprofit organization, and we are still a state agency of government. And so there are additional steps that we must take in order to develop our guidelines and work with the state treasury and state treasurer's office. So we are trying to expedite the development of grant overview guidelines and our budget in conjunction with the state's finance office. But we have received a little more than $400,000 for stimulus funds to help with job retention and to help arts nonprofits literally stay afloat and stay stabilized through this pandemic. In the coming weeks, you will see information coming from our agency about how we will be granting/distributing those funds. You will see a press release coming next week that we are doing in conjunction with the Oklahoma Humanities about our federal funds that are going to both of our organizations. If there's another stimulus package in the pipeline in terms of the federal level, we are continuing to watch if there will be additional support for the arts. In addition to the federal stimulus monies, there are additional resources that I'm sure many of you have seen, and that we have tried to keep those resources on our website, and Joel will be updating and talking about that later in our call today. On the state level, this has been quite a very active last couple of weeks. As you probably have noticed in the news, for the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th, so we're still in fiscal year 2020, there is a current budget shortfall. The governor had called for a special session a week ago Monday to ask that the legislature deal with the more than $400 million shortfall for the current fiscal year. And this is due to the oil and gas industry and the dropping fossil fuel prices, as well as the ramifications of the pandemic on our state's economy. When that special session happened, the legislature, gave unprecedented powers to the governor and triggered the Catastrophic Health Emergency Powers Act. They second, overwhelmingly, both the House and the Senate passed 3 bills to tap into the state's quote unquote rainy day fund to cover the budget shortfall. On the same day of that special session, the Board of Equalization was going to meet to declare a revenue failure, which was needed to trigger one of the bills to go into effect and to constitutionally allow for funds to be transferred from the rainy day fund into the general revenue fund for the state. The governor ended up canceling that meeting because he chairs the Board of Equalization, and that was due to the fact that he was not pleased that certain funds that he felt were part of their agreement on how to cover the budget shortfall for his digital transformation fund were not included in one of the bills. So I'm sure you saw since then, the governor signed 2 of the 3 bills, which covered April appropriations or allocations of our annual budget through April, but May and June are still uncertain. So we're continuing to watch this. I'm sure you probably also saw in the news that the House and Senate leadership, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, the leader of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and the appropriation and budget chairs of both the House and the Senate, all Republican leaders, ended up taking a lawsuit to the Oklahoma Supreme Court to try to force the Board of Equalization to meet under their constitutional obligation and duty. The Supreme Court has then answered and is requiring that the Board of Equalization, as well as the legislative leadership, bring their attorneys or counsel to have an oral hearing early next week. So we will see what the next steps are. If they are unable to resolve this, our state agencies, including ours, may be looking at a budget shortfall for the last 2 months of the year. And to this end, that would constitute about $120,000 for our agency. And I just want to keep everyone, that's not to cause fear, but I just want everybody to be in the know. So if you do see these things and we follow up with communications, you'll understand where those are falling into. In response to the pandemic, our agency, as the state leader in the arts, have been leading conversations with arts, cultural, humanities, and history sectors with our Lieutenant Governor. So Lieutenant Governor Pinnell has been participating, and or his staff, with leaders from sectors in the public, private, and philanthropic areas in the arts and creative sector in conversations that are happening every other week. We're trying to lead this conversation to help be responsive in this space. So in your breakout calls today, our staff will be listening for areas in which we need to take back to that body, ways that we can be responsive to you. So please feel free to share your thoughts about how we can respond to your needs. In addition, we have been really intentional about changing our grant criteria in response to the pandemic to allow for more flexibility for you as grantees. We know that you're on the ground working and trying to be responsive. And with that, we worked with both the Attorney General's office to seek counsel on our agency's authority to revise our grant criteria to be responsive to the pandemic. And we also had to work with the National Endowment for the Arts, our federal funding partner, to make sure that any changes that we made in grant making would still not jeopardize any eligibility or flexibility that we needed to have within the space of our federal funds. To that end, we then took revised grant criteria based on their feedback from both the state and national level to our executive committee of our council on Friday, March 27th, and we had approved their revised criteria, which Thomas will cover in depth. And what we hope from this that you hear from our agency is that we are working to be responsive to your needs, and we're trying to get cash in your hands, and we're trying to help you still pay artists and provide programming in other spaces such as digital or virtual platforms. Finally, we've been having many town hall meetings, just like this one. This is our 4th town hall. We started with our organizational support grantees. These are our large backbone arts organizations statewide. And then we've had other town hall meetings to cover these same areas for our project-based organizations, an arts education conversation, and here with you all today. A couple of things that maybe might be pertinent to some of our organizations on the phone. Prior to the pandemic taking full effect, the legislature passed Senate Bill 661. And with open meetings, as many of you work in this space with your nonprofits and having open meetings for citizen input and transparency as a best practice, one of the takeaways was that with this bill, this allows nonprofits and organizations and boards that are under state control or state government to have more flexibility in how you conduct your board meetings. One of the things about this bill is that it's applicable only when the state is declared an emergency status by the governor, but it allows for board meetings to be done via video or teleconferencing. The public should still know how they can call in and listen to your board meetings via digital platforms. This is a form of transparency as best practice by nonprofits. But votes must be done on a roll call basis rather than vocal yay or nays. And we'll be sending out some follow-up information for best practices and information from the Attorney General's office in this space. And we hope that this just gives you clear direction as you're trying to navigate having board and executive committee calls in a digital kind of environment rather than in-person meetings for your safety. So that is all I have for an update from the council, and I'll be happy to answer questions in this space or in our Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Amber. All right, next up is Thomas.
All right, hello everyone. This is Thomas Tran, Grants Director here at Oklahoma Arts Council. I'm so glad to be with you all today. I just want to take a minute to quickly echo what Amber said. All of us here at Oklahoma Arts Council recognize the significant impacts that the pandemic has on organizations across the state, and we see and hear about postponed programs and canceled events daily. And we just want to make sure that you know that we're here, always thinking about you, and we're doing everything we can to support your work and support you during this time. So please feel free to let us know if you ever have any questions or need any pointers to resources, and we're here to help. Today, I'm going to be covering some updates to our fiscal year 2020 grants, which includes all awarded projects that are taking place right now through June 30th, 2020. So we will look at some revised grant program criteria in response to the pandemic. Then we'll look at grant applications that have been submitted but are still waiting funding determinations. We'll cover what to do if you were awarded a grant, but there were some changes that have taken place due to the pandemic. We'll look at our COVID-19 impact report, and then just briefly touch again on grant payments. So first off is, oh, my computer is a little frozen. All right, we're back. So first off is revised grant program criteria. So in response to the anticipated challenges and impact of the pandemic, our staff and governor appointed board have worked together to explore ways in which we can shift our grant making to reflect this new environment in which organizations are now operating. As Amber said, we've consulted with the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as the Oklahoma Attorney General Council to see what we're able to do within compliance of the state constitution and the terms of our own partnership grant with the National Endowment for the Arts. So what we are able to do right now is we've amended our grant program criteria for small grant supports. We've amended our approved uses criteria to include costs that are associated with the planning and delivery of virtual programming and content. So we've seen organizations across the state begin to adapt to this new environment and shifting their work to the virtual space, be it online, on Facebook, through Instagram TV, and YouTube, and other methods as well. So we see a lot of great innovation that's going on right now, and we want to ensure that you, our grantees, are able to utilize Oklahoma Arts Council funding to support your programming during this time. So the changes to this, to the criteria, you are able to utilize your grant funds to support all previously allowable expenses. So artistic fees, administrative fees, and technical fees, whatever was approved in your original grant award notification and contract. In addition, the new part is you can use these grant funds to cover any costs associated with the planning and delivery of virtual content. You're encouraged to utilize Oklahoma Arts Council funds to, of course, support the payment of working artists, contracted arts professionals who are a part of your project. We're currently researching best practices and models for delivering virtual programming and content while maintaining to financially support organizations, artists, and arts professionals. We believe that organizations should remain committed to appropriately compensating artists for their work. So Oklahoma Arts Council is working on additional information that we'll release in the coming weeks to guide the arts sector and the community on how to financially support organizational operations as well as arts professionals in this new space. So again, you can pivot to your grant funds if you're looking to move your projects through a virtual delivery. And the exclusions and ineligible uses of Oklahoma Arts Council funding still remains the same. So there are still the same restrictions right now as there were at your time of application. I'm going to quickly pass the virtual mic to Joel Gavin, our Marketing and Communications Director, to review some new information on grant acknowledgement requirements.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for responding to my email to asking you to be here today and joining this conversation. I do hope that it's going to provide you a lot of great information to answer any questions, clarify anything related to our grants and how we're working to address some needs out there. Related to what Thomas is referring to, as he mentioned, a lot of programming now moving to online virtual settings. And so we are currently working on updating our acknowledgement guidelines. As you know, in your grant contracts, there are requirements to appropriately acknowledge support of the Oklahoma Arts Council and National Endowment for the Arts for support of your programs. And so we just want to make sure that that appropriate acknowledgement continues in those virtual settings. And so we are trying to update those to provide you some guidance. Again, if you are currently doing some virtual content or whatever you're doing on social media in terms of promoting your programs, we do want to just ask that you continue to use our logo where appropriate in those settings, our credit line, if that's more appropriate in a setting. And again, we'll be offering some guidelines for that pretty soon in writing for you to make it a little easier to follow. But again, just to reiterate that ultimately the purpose in that is to continue to increase awareness among the public, among Oklahomans and your audiences, those in your community whom you serve, just letting them know how the Oklahoma Arts Council, which is supported by those individuals, ultimately, how it's benefiting their quality of life, how it's benefiting their communities and their educational opportunities. So we appreciate your attention to that. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joel. Next, we will talk about pending submissions. So you may have submitted a small grant application in the past few months and haven't heard news about funding determinations from our grant office. So we've been putting a pause on issuing new grant award notifications to take some time and assess our grant programs and how to navigate through this new space that we're currently in. We will resume issuing grant award notifications by email in the coming weeks. Please, in the meantime, contact the grants office if you have any questions, and we're here to answer them, but we will resume those award notifications soon. Project changes. Projects that we're going to address projects that have already received award notifications and are in granted status. So this means that your authorizing official has logged on to accept the contract between Oklahoma Arts Council and your organization. And again, these programs are already occurring and they end before June 30th, 2020. Oklahoma Arts Council recognizes that you may have had to modify, postpone, or cancel your projects that are currently supported by Oklahoma Arts Council funds due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to the nature of project-based funding and the terms of our grant contracts, we are required to record any changes that take place to your funded project. So taking a look at the possible changes to your projects during this time, there may be some different scenarios, so we'll go over them right here and how to address them moving forward. The first is an unchanged project. So you may have a project that was not impacted by the pandemic. It might have wrapped up before stay-at-home orders were put in place. And you might be ready to work on the final report, or you're in the middle of that right now. So if you fall under this category, you can move through submitting the final report as you usually would, and feel free to contact us if you have any information or if you have any questions. The next scenario is if you had to do a date change. So did the stay-at-home orders change the dates where you're conducting your project? Are you looking to possibly push your dates towards later on in the fiscal year? If this is similar to what you're doing for your organization and your project, we will ask for you to complete the COVID-19 impacts report that we'll speak about in a few minutes here. The next option is modifications. So due to the pandemic, did you have to switch to delivering your program in a different way? So are you instead moving your concerts into an online live stream on Facebook? Are you doing your hands-on arts learning through a Google Classroom or a Zoom meeting instead? If this sounds like what your art organization is doing, then we do ask for you to complete the COVID-19 impacts report that we'll cover, and our staff will contact you afterwards. So some other additions and options that may have taken place to your project during this time is you may have had to cancel your projects or move your projects to a date that falls beyond our contracted fiscal year, which is June 30th, 2020. So if you have plans to cancel your project and move it to later on this year in the fall, we ask for you to complete our COVID-19 impact report. But we do want to let you know that even if you have canceled your program and you're postponing it, there may be some more expenses that you've already incurred that can still be covered by our existing grant funds. So as Amber mentioned earlier, we've consulted with the National Endowment for the Arts and the State of Oklahoma Attorney General Counsel. And we confirmed that both federal funding guidelines and the state constitution separately mandate that grant funding from Oklahoma Arts Council can only be used to support services that are rendered. So this means that our grant funds can only support services or events that have taken place. Our funds cannot be used to support undelivered or canceled services. However, it is allowable for our grant funds to support partial payments for services provided up to the cancellation of the service. So what does this mean? Maybe you were in the process of planning an arts learning course and you have hired your teaching artist. Your teaching artist may have put in hours to plan the curriculum and to do some planning for the class. There may have been some administrative work as well to work on the grant application. And you may have purchased different supplies associated with the project. If you've incurred any expenses to your project up to the date of cancellation, we are still able to work with you to make sure that you can maximize the award amount that you were granted and see what your expenses you have already fits into that grant award. So if this sounds like something that your organization is doing, please complete the COVID-19 impact report, and our staff will be contacting you shortly. The last option is canceled and not rescheduled. So this option is if your organization has chosen to cancel your programming and you have no plans on rescheduling this event for a future date. So again, there may be a chance that you have some incurred expenses and costs that we can still claim as part of your grant. We are able to provide funding to any services that are rendered up to the date that you officially canceled the event. So please come submit that COVID-19 impacts report and we will get back to you and work with you on how to move forward. If you have any questions during this, please feel free to type it into the chat box and we will get to it during our Q&A session. All right, so we are moving on to this COVID impact report that I keep on talking about. So our staff has developed the COVID-19 impact report as a result, in response to the requirement and satisfy the contractual needs of notifying Oklahoma Arts Council for your project changes. This will also help us inform the status of your projects, collect some information so that we know how this pandemic is impacting your organization, your community, and overall the arts in Oklahoma. So this COVID-19 impact report is an online form that will be emailed to your organization's grant contact. So please look forward to this email in the future. And I know that Joel Gavin will be sending this link out to you as well. This report is an additional required report for any project that has been impacted by the pandemic. Again, if your awarded OAC project was impacted by this pandemic, please complete this impact report. This does not replace your final report. So your final report is still required to be submitted in order to start the payment process for your grant. So I'm going to go into more detail and walk through the COVID-19 impacts report with you. Again, you'll receive this link in an email soon. This is what the form will look like once you access that link. We do ask for you to submit a separate form for every awarded project that was impacted by the pandemic. So in the small grant support category, you could submit this form up to 2 times if you have 2 programs that were impacted by the pandemic. We first cover some basic contact information from you, your name, your organization, your email address, and your phone number. And this is just so that we know who you are and we have any updated contact information in the event that your phone number or email has changed if you have moved to a work from home status. Next is the project change. So this covers the points that I spoke about earlier, looking at all the different scenarios in which your project has had to shift due to the pandemic. So the choices are that your project was partially executed but ended early due to the pandemic, if your project will still occur before the end of the fiscal year, but your dates will change. Option 3 is your project will occur in fiscal year 20, but it will be held online or delivered through virtual means. Option 4 is that your project will occur in fiscal year 20, the dates will change, and it will be held online or delivered through virtual means. Option 5 is that your project is canceled for fiscal year 20, but it will be rescheduled in after July 1st, 2020 in the next fiscal year. I will restate that if you are canceling the project for the fiscal year, there may be some expenses that you can still claim as part of your grant award. If you select this option, our staff will reach out to you and work with you to see if we can claim those expenses. The last option is that your project is canceled and will not be rescheduled. Again, we will reach out to you and see if there are any expenses that we can help you claim as part of your grant, if this is the way that your organization is going. Next, we collect some more detailed information about your project changes. So question number 8, and you only have to complete these questions if they're applicable to what your organization is doing. Question number 8 asks for your new project dates. If you had to revise your project dates and they are different from how you originally submitted them in your grant application. Question number 9 is online and or virtual programming delivery. So this addresses our revised grant criteria, allowing organizations to claim any expenses related to virtual and online delivery. So if this is the avenue in which your organization is moving forward, we ask you to provide a brief narrative here and detail what the changes are taking place and how you're adapting your program. Again, this is project-based funding, and our grant contracts are awarded according to what you have presented in your grant application. So if anything has changed or has been altered since that submission of the application, we ask for you to detail that in this box so we can amend your grant project. The last part of this impact report is the impact survey. I will state that all of your responses to this section will not impact or affect your grant funding. Question number 10 is required for everyone submitting this impact report. We're asking for you to estimate the total decrease of individuals served as a result of rescheduling or canceling your project. We know that this number is difficult to pinpoint, but we ask that you just estimate if you had to cancel or modify your project, how many individuals were you planning on serving? And this will just give us a better idea of just the overall impact of this pandemic on the arts in Oklahoma. Question number 11 is applicable to mainly nonprofit arts organizations, but if it is applicable to your organization as well, please feel free to complete it. We are asking how much your organization's earned income or revenue has decreased as a result of rescheduling or canceling the project. And question number 12 asks, please estimate how much your organization's private investments, sponsorships, or donations have increased as a result of rescheduling or canceling your project. Question number 13 is optional, and it's asking, in addition to the information provided above, how has the pandemic impacted your organization? So this is a narrative field. We ask for you to provide any stories or any other ways that the pandemic has really changed the way that you've been doing your work. You can include information such as if you've had to change your employment, if you had to issue any furloughs, cancel any contract services, or do any layoffs. This is where you can include that information. And all of these questions here, and we'll use these responses to better inform our work and give us a better idea of what the arts sector is going through right now. And hopefully from that information, we can be more responsive to your needs and put together resources to better serve you. All right, and that was our COVID-19 impacts report. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to plug it into that chat box, or you can always contact us as well, and we're here to answer those questions. The last point is grant payments. Amber touched on this earlier, and I just will restate that our grant payments are a little delayed at this point just due to the current climate, and it's taking us a little longer since we do have to manually pick up those checks and send them out. If your organization is ready to submit a final report, please do so. We're still reviewing those final reports on our regular schedule. So if your organization has completed your programming and ready to do that, submit your final report, send in your support materials. We will review that and ask any questions if we have any, and then we will start the payment process for your grant. All right, so that was all I have to cover for the fiscal year 2020 small grant supports. In reviewing really quickly, let me try to navigate back. Just as a quick review, we covered some revised grant criteria. You're now able to utilize your grant funds to support online and virtual programming. We talked about pending submissions. You will be hearing from our grants office within the next few weeks if you've submitted a grant application and haven't heard from us. Any project changes, we're asking for you to complete the COVID-19 impacts report if your project has been affected by the pandemic, and we will get back to you in response to whatever you send in that form. And then finally, grant payments. We are still making those grant payments out, and they may be delayed as a result of the pandemic. If you have any questions about managing your grant award, please leave those questions in the chat box, and we will answer them during our question and answer session at 4:45. Or you can always contact our grants office, and the contact information is right there. It's also available on our website. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you all soon.
Thanks, Thomas. All right, Joel.
All right. Well, hello again, and this is Joel Gavin, Marketing and Communications Director. And of course, although our staff is working from home, like probably all of you, our primary concern remains our service to the field and to you and to to individuals and the audiences whom you serve. So with that in mind, we are collecting and putting together a list of resources that that we want to make sure that you're aware about. And so on our website, we have activated our Oklahoma Arts Emergency resource page, and I will post the link to that in the chat. And this, at this point, is a resource list of about 60 different grants and resources for organizations and individual artists and others to use to meet the challenges, help them meet the challenges they're facing with the pandemic. These are national resources, regional resources, and local resources. And we will be adding to this list as we learn about the various resources that exist out there or that are being made available. So I would encourage you to maybe bookmark this page. We will be pushing this information out as well through our newsletters and social media. So I do hope that you're paying attention to that. We just want to make sure that we are equipping all of you to navigate this time as best as possible. So please reference that list, take a look, and hopefully some of this information will be helpful for you during this time. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Joel. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to divide everyone out into small breakout rooms. And as we go into those breakout rooms, the participants will be unmuted and everybody will be given the ability to mute and unmute themselves. If you wouldn't mind, please, keeping yourselves on mute when you aren't speaking, just to minimize that background noise and distraction. I also ask if you would just take a moment to silence any devices or notifications you may have. So during this session, we're actually running ahead of schedule. So we allotted about 45 minutes, which was about 3 minutes per grantee to share out. So we may be able to give a little bit more time or flexibility in that session. So everybody will have a chance to share out with the group and provide updates and share those strategies and innovations that you're doing through your organization. Please be mindful just to honor equal time in the group with your colleagues so everyone has a chance to share and be heard. So Thomas, if you will work your magic, we'll go into our rooms. Almost. Oh, here we go. Thomas, do we have everyone back from the breakout rooms? I'm showing 52 participants.
Let me take a look here and see. Yes, everyone is back.
Great. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some nice discussions in your small group breakout sessions. Right now, we're running ahead of schedule, so I thought we'd allow for about 10 to 15 minutes of a Q&A session. If you all have any specific questions for our staff, feel free to type those in the chat. And I believe Heidi is going to help out with our Q&A.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for being here. So I wanted to first open it up to a few of our call-ins, just because I know you don't have access to the chat room. If anyone that was here on their phone line and wanted to ask any questions first before we open it up to the chat room, now is the time. I always like to give a few moments for people to unmute and get settled in. Hi, did you want to say something? All right, I think, okay. All right, so do we have any, let me go from the first question is from Jamie Williams. Can we now apply for future small grants with the new guidelines that will allow for performance via virtual space? Now, Jamie, just to clarify your question, are you talking about within this fiscal year? So between this point on until June 30th?
For next fiscal year.
For next
So,
fiscal?
correct. So can we apply for things maybe happening in August, in the fall, knowing that things might still really be up in the air?
Right, right. I'll try to answer this question and then I'll open it up to Thomas. So for the next fiscal year, we open up those small grants starting May 1st. So anything that's coming in starting July and such, we can open that up May 1st. So hopefully by May 1st, if you don't have any clear direction, we can tackle that on as that. Thomas, did you want to add anything?
No, that was great, Heidi.
Thanks. All right. Next question is from Norman Hammond. One of my organizations has a project happening on the last weekend of April, but it is still pending. When will we receive confirmation of the award? So you're saying, Norman, that you submitted an application and haven't gotten a grant award notification?
We've had discussions with Thomas and Heidi about it, but and we're still planning on doing it. It's just that I realized in our discussions that we're about less than 2 weeks out from that, and my other organization their project is until June, so that's not so much of a problem. But I just wondered because Thomas was saying within the next few weeks, and I assume we're probably not the only organization in that position. So my question is, Thomas and everyone else, how much time are we really talking about before we get? I'm not talking about the contracts as much as I am about the formal notification.
All right, hi Norman. Yeah, that's a great question. So we're working on finalizing the nuances of all of that. So we had to go back and change some language in the notification just due to the current climate and everything we're in. Just making sure that everything in there makes sense to the situation that we're in. So we're in the process of doing that, but we're working on getting that to you as soon as possible. But we're working on it. And yeah, if you don't hear anything from us by next week, give me a call and we'll see. But
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Do you want us to notify you of modifications before or after the award?
Well, once you receive the award, if you could send the impacts report to us after the award, just because the impacts report will ask for your specific project information, like your project ID number.
Okay, that was the assumption we were working on. I just wanted to be sure about that.
All right, no problem. That was a great question.
All right, next question is from George Borman, and also if I butcher your names, I'm so sorry. The question is, we are in application phase, which was already submitted. Dates have changed due to the COVID-19. What actions are required on our behalf? So if I'm understanding that correctly, that is you've already submitted your application and things have already changed. So then what we would have you do is wait till the impact report comes out and go ahead and fill that out with as much information as you can if you haven't gotten your award notification. The next question is, from Ken Tracy, what is your current thinking regarding distribution of emergency funding from the CARES Act? Great question.
I can answer that. Hi, Ken. How are you? We just received notification about the NEA and the guidelines. I just had a phone call this week with Chairman Carter of the National Endowment for the Arts, plus the NEA state partnership staff, as well as all 50 executive directors from the state arts agencies across the nation, where we were given guidance on how to develop our own grant criteria related to that. And so I just now have had that information where I'm putting it in notes, and we have a meeting next week with our staff to take those things into consideration. And I'm going to be meeting with my executive committee on Tuesday to seek their guidance about how we distribute the NEA CARES Act funding. So I anticipate that we will have some answers less than the next 2 weeks, at least, in terms of how we're going to formally move forward. And I appreciate everyone's patience. I know Oklahoma Humanities came out the gate, and I'm very thrilled that they were able to offer their grant, their stimulus funds. There's a couple of discrepancies between our agencies because they're a nonprofit organization and we're an entity of state government. So I have to do a few extra steps with the state treasury department. We have to do budget revisions and some other aspects of steps in order to get those funds through and approved through the pipeline, including our board. So I appreciate everyone's patience, but timeliness is our priority because we know that the sector is in triage. We understand that, and we're trying to expedite, but go through all the appropriate channels that we are required to do based on how we're governed. So we're walking a very fine line between expediting and making sure that we get the approvals that we need from the various entities within state government and our governing board. But that's a great question, and we're trying to be as responsive as possible.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I have another question that was, what is the deadline for submitting the COVID-19 impact report? And Thomas, do you have a deadline that you would like people to submit that to you?
That's a great question, Heidi. So we're going to be sending out the link to that impacts report soon. And once you get it, if we ask that you submit that as soon as you know information about how your project has changed. There is no deadline, but again, we ask for you to submit it as soon as you can so that we have that data up front.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Now, I just wanted to make sure, let me just double check the participant list, make sure there's nobody raising hands or anything. All right, well, I'm not gonna, be the one to get in the way between you and the weekend. So I will pass it on to our staff for the closing if no one else has any other questions. But I know I wanted to thank you all for being here. And if anything does come up, feel free to contact any of our staff members and we will get those questions answered.
Well, if there is no other questions, I just want to end us with a closing of, we want to thank you for everything that you're doing in this space. We realize that you're serving Oklahomans and our people, their souls need nourishment as they're in isolation, as well as we're experiencing those. And I think if there was ever a time that we can demonstrate the power of the arts and cultural sector, now is the time when we are truly trying to feed our community. We wish everyone health and safety as you navigate this space and the complexities. We are also trying to navigate that as well. And so we ask for grace and patience as we're trying to work through this uncharted and uncertain time. But we are unified and cohesive as a community. And I hope that you know that you have the full backing of the Oklahoma Arts Council board and staff. We appreciate what you're doing day in and out. We know it's an emotional and financially taxing time. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, this is what our purpose is to hold you up, equip you, empower you, connect you to one another, and recognize the value, the intrinsic value of our work, and how we hope that we can collectively not lose ground, but figure out how to, utilize and leverage our innovation in this space to bring our state forward and to work with those who we know that the arts heal mind, body, and spirit. So whatever we can do to help you, no task is too small or too big. Please reach out. We want to be your resource, your cheerleaders, your hopefully foundation to help you move forward. So thank you.